Okay, so this is the fourth and final lecture you have out of Chapter 3 here on networking. Lots of good material in here, lots of good information. The topic that I'm going to cover in this talk, though, is going to be more restricted to rather the entire internet, just the World Wide Web. All right, and it's important to distinguish the difference between the web and the internet. The web is a series of web servers. The internet is a much bigger entity than just web servers we have. And just a simple example, we have mail, for instance. Okay, so mail servers are generally differentiated from web servers. Okay, and so web servers are programmed to send files to web browsers connected across the internet. So think of the web as a subset of all the computers on the internet. And think of the internet as this, big highway, and the web is just maybe one form of traffic, okay, one vehicle that we use on the internet. So looking strictly at the web here, there's really a thing I want you to understand here and be able to describe is the three parts of a URL. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. It consists of a protocol. Most common it's HTTP : // but it can differentiate to other things. We're going to use some FTP, and that'll look a little different. The second part here is in red. It's the server computer name, and it can be an IP address or it can be the fully qualified domain name. All right, and then the last part is the path name, and the path name refers to what directory it's stored in on the web server, or directories, subdirectories, and then what's the name of the file. Okay, so this is overlooked a lot on the web, but it's really important as you do the assignment that's associated with this particular lesson that we have here, because you're going to need to store files in a folder, and take the folder and move it over to a web server, and then copy files over that web server, and then have the ability to pull up your web browser and go find them again. So a solid understanding of protocol, server computer name, and then the path of the page that you're looking for is really going to be helpful as you move forward through the rest of this class. So web pages, all right. We have, if you think of what you typically see on a web page, you see all these nice different fonts and colors, and there's lots of formatting, there's images, there's hyperlinks to other things. All right, so these pages here are really just text, plain text, but they have descriptors, and the descriptors that we work with, and I think this is out of your textbook. If you want to, you might not be able to see this too well, but if you look at Figure 3.11 out of your textbook, you will find that here's on the bottom window, and I believe this is a Safari web browser for the Mac. It shows a web page as a person would see it, and here's a little information about this special computer. There's a picture of it, there's some different fonts, some formatting and all that, but that's not really what makes up that particular file. In the background there, you'll see the HTML code for it. All right, and that's the HTML or hypertext markup language is the language of the web. All right, and you can see what it looks like, and by the way, in another week or two you guys will be writing code like this as well. Okay, it's known as markup code. So talking about that a little bit, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is the language of web servers. It identifies not only the content but also how it should be displayed, the layout, the formatting, the look. Also allows you to add hyperlinks, which allow you to either move from another document on that same server or a document on a different server. And it also allows you to connect to images and display images. So you can read about the history a little more in your textbook about HTML. Let's go back to, again, the big picture here. So when is the WW required? And this is really an interesting discussion, and please pay attention to it here. Maybe I'll start with a question. Is www required to go to every website? I'm going to give you some examples. If I want to go to the University of Montana's web page, I can go to www.umt.edu and it will take me to that because that's their web server, right? In fact, sometimes they put things in DNS, so if I don't put the computer name there, it will automatically take me to a web server. So some people can get away with saying, oh, I want to go to University of Montana web server. I just type in umt.edu. And they have skipped an important step here, but because we like to have resilient computers, that umt.edu actually will move them to www.umt.edu. Remember that www? That's the name of a computer. All right, let's do some other comparisons. If I want to register for classes at the University of Montana, I go to CyberBear. The URL for CyberBear has no www. In fact, it starts with CyberBear. And its fully qualified domain name is cyberbear.umt.edu. We have other ones. For instance, if you're getting into the online shell for this class, you go to the UM Online homepage, which is umonline.umt.edu. All right, notice all three of those examples have a computer name, and then the UMT, the second level domain, and then the top level domain, edu. All three of those components are there, but you don't always need www. Okay. Now the other portion. Okay, we talked about the protocol, and then we talked about really the DNS stuff, the domain name or the IP address. And after that, we look at the folder and maybe subdirectories. I'll use directory and folder interchangeably. I think that's pretty common. And then where the file exists that we're looking for. Okay, so look at a hierarchy here. Here's a hierarchy out of your textbook. We organize all sorts of information into hierarchies. And you could use this actually to organize on a web server too. So you go to fluency /part1 /chapter 3 /file structure, etc., etc. So there's a hierarchy for the textbook. Let's look at some other hierarchies here too. Okay, so here's a website. You got the protocol, http://. The name of the computer here is www. The subdomain is NASM. The second level domain is SI. The top level domain is EDU. Okay, and that / there ends that particular portion of the URL. Next is a subdirectory or a folder called exhibitions, and then there's another subdirectory underneath that called GA1100. And in the folder GA1100, you'll find a file called pioneer.html. All right, that's the file they're trying to pull up. All right, the second bullet item here shows just the folder and the file name. Now it's important to note here that with we mentioned directories, I think, in an earlier, domains and subdomains, second level domains, all that stuff in an earlier little lecture I gave here. And we said that dot notation is used to separate subdomains from top level domains and subdomains underneath those subdomains, etc. Well, with the directory structure, just like you'd find on maybe your hard drive on your personal computer, we use slashes. And if you're on a Microsoft system, you use backslashes. Okay, backslash, it kind of from left to right goes down the page. Okay, and moves from left to right, versus a / kind of moves up the page from left to right. All right. The web is built upon, years ago, Linux and Unix machines, so it uses /, unlike your Microsoft operating system. So make the adjustment. It's not a big deal, but that separates directories, right, or folders. All right, and that's the /. Make sure you're able to distinguish a / from a backslash, because that'll come in at some point as an important topic too. All right, so let's look at this from a different hierarchy here now. It's actually, I shouldn't say a different hierarchy, but a different way of viewing the hierarchy. So if I look at this, the way that this particular web server is organized, the path name, as your author refers to, there's a folder here called exhibitions, and underneath exhibitions there's one or more folders, but there's definitely one called GAL100. And then underneath GAL100 is this file. It's stored in this particular directory. So we can look at the path name as a hierarchy. Or if we want to go back up here, we can look at the path name, as it would be displayed in a URL. Okay. So when a URL ends in a slash, a forward slash, the browser looks for a file called index.html. It could also look for a file called default.html, depending upon the system. But that's one of the ways it looks for. So what happens when I go, let's look at the big picture here again. I go to www.umt.edu, but I have not put a path name on that. Well, when it doesn't find a path name in a directory, what your web server usually serves up to the client is a file, a default file. All right, and that default file is either called index.html or default.html. This will be important because we will do this with our web server when we create our student accounts and we start generating HTML documents. If you want folks to go just to your account and bring up a main page, you'll probably need to call that page index.html or default.html. Why is there two different ones? Well, typically on a Microsoft server they use default.html. on a Linux-based or Unix-based server, they'll use index.html, and a lot of them you can customize that. Whoever your web server administrator is, they can customize it. So use either one or create something totally different. The hierarchies are important because people use them to organize their thinking and their work, and also if we have multiple, which is very common to have multiple users on the same web server, it's to keep people into their space where they belong and keep them out of other people's space. Okay, and directories are free. There's no reason not to use them. So just like I might go back to my desktop in my office, I might have a file cabinet there where I store things. Well, I put those in folders, otherwise things will be a mess. And the same analogy is also true with your web server.